can never say his last name. Whatever. Anybody, Ben, you should come on too. I'll treat you fairly.
We'll invite him. Yeah.
I would love to talk to him. I really would. It's purely analytical. I'm just like, who are you? What do you guys want? You know, you and a couple of brothers, you got the top podcast in the entire country. What's up with that? All right. You know, what do you attribute your success to?
Change.
Absolutely fascinated. All right. Let's start with the markets. As you said, it's been a absolutely dizzying 24, 72 week hours in the markets. Absolutely, you know, terrible start right now. It's the worst stock market performance for an American president in their opening days since 2009.
Oh,
and
wow.
The White House is not exactly offering up quite a bit of confidence. Here is Kevin Hassett. He is the White House economic advisor, previously served in the Trump administration, downplaying the stock market drop, saying it's just a blip. Let's take a listen.
If you're thinking about like what's going to happen to capital formation in the U.S., if you take our cost of capital measures, it goes up 10, 11% over the next year. There are a lot of reasons to be extremely bullish about the economy going forward. But for sure, this quarter, there are some blips in the data, including the negative GDP Dow, which are related both to the Biden inheritance and to some, you know, timing effects that are happening ahead of tariffs.
You don't think Trump owns any of that? I think, you know, even someone that was right in the middle would not immediately attribute the soft. I'm seeing it on Twitter constantly. You know, how's this guy doing now? How's that feel? How's winning feel with the economy? And they're not tying it to Biden, Kevin. They're tying it to some of the uncertainty from the Trump administration.
Well, let's be clear, though, Joe, that last year, the Biden numbers, we kept getting these great jobs numbers. And then by the end of the year, we see that they're revised down by a whole million. And so a lot of the numbers that looked kind of good at the advance release weren't good in retrospect.
Well, they were still pretty good. And that was a technical thing.
No, even then.
So it's just a blip. Don't worry about it. I'm not so sure that's the way that I would read it, especially when you take a look at the indices. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. So we got the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped some 6 points in the last month, and a couple, I think 2 or 3% of that, or sorry, 6% just in the last month, and a couple of percent just yesterday. Let's go to the next one, please, and let's take a look at that. Oh, there's the NASDAQ down 11% on the month, down full 4% yesterday. NASDAQ is a very tech-heavy index, so that's another reason why you should pay attention. Let's go to the next one, the S&P 500, and what do we see there? That's right, it's down 7.5% there in the last month. Keep in mind, things obviously could change, you know, by the time that we post this, but futures are not looking that great right now. I mean, basically a 0.5% increase there in the S&P 500, but not erasing the multiple points that were dropped yesterday in the overall index. And the most worrying part of this is it basically is making a reality of something that we've really been warning about here on this show now for several months, if not years, which is just the way that these indices are so heavily reliant on these so-called Magnificent Seven stocks. And today is a very inauspicious day if you're a technology investor. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. Today is exactly 25 years to the day from when the dot-com bubble burst. And if you read this, it's really interesting. What the dot-com bust can tell us about today's AI boom is, quote, today some investors are worried the same cycle is playing out when it comes to artificial intelligence. Even if that's the case, there is an important lesson for investors. Ultimately, the early internet hype did prove correct, but it took years for that to materialize. The economy was effectively in a recession. I went back and was reading some chapters from John Cassidy. He's a New Yorker reporter book, and he wrote a book in '03 called .con. Highly recommend it. And that book just nails the very similar way that we think about NVIDIA, about Google, about Meta, about not only the amount of capital that they were burning as much at the time, but in the similar way of the sky is the limit in the moonshot ideas that people had behind them. Now, not everything is as insane as diapers or Priceline.com per se, but remember, even a modest correction of, let's say, 30, 40% for NVIDIA would still leave it massively valuable. That's a huge percentage of the S&P 500. Same for the NASDAQ, for the Dow Jones, for the total market, and it affects everything going forward, just as the dot-com bubble did as well. interest rates, how Americans are thinking about their retirement, consumer spending. Don't forget how many of these dollars are flowing through the economy that are keeping up employment statistics, housing. I mean, there's so many different downstream effects of what the dot-com recession, which we effectively were in a recession for almost 2 years after that period. It was not a good time. Remember, we also had 9/11. And even with that, there was a huge public bailout, but the markets did not recover for quite some time. So I am very worried about this situation. No, it's not about the fact that rich people have lost a bunch of money. It's that, especially today, America has a social contract. Our social contract is we don't have any social welfare beyond Social Security. We have the number, and the number has got to go up, because if it doesn't go up, then none of us can retire. And with that, Americans are very, very tuned in right now, just as they were back in 2008. It not only causes a lot of fear at the retirement level, it obviously restricts consumer spending, which is a disaster in an economy with 70%. Now, on top of that, we've got tariff threats, some that are literally supposed to go into effect today. Yeah. And April 2nd is the big one. Donald Trump's words, reciprocal tariffs.
That's right.
So all of that right now, markets are spooked. Really with the takeaway that I've seen on Wall Street is he's not kidding around, and this is bad for us. It could be good in the long run, could be. You need to sell it to us, though. I remember the Biden administration saying, oh, actually what you're seeing and hearing isn't all that is actually okay. Things are good at the fundamentals, or look in the future for where things are. Nobody in American politics has ever won a message with something like that. They need to have a lot of trust and a lot of faith if you're going to put them through a period of pain.
Yeah, and certainly Donald Trump has a vastly greater ability to sell a story to the American public than Joe Biden did. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, there is nothing. And I mean, I think, I have long thought that his policy was sort of insane and made no sense, especially given the economic landscape that we're facing today. But to your point, Saagar, for Hassett to say like, oh, this is just a blip. Yeah, sure. We got the hangover from the Biden administration. We're dealing with that. And, maybe there's a little adjustment period as the tariffs kick in, et cetera. It's hard to imagine. Maybe he's right, but it's hard to imagine that's the case when you have no end in sight of the sort of tumult and chaos. So as Saagar mentioned, you've got the imposition of the reciprocal tariffs coming into effect on April 2nd. So, all of the tariffs that were rolled back with regard to Canada and Mexico, those are supposed to be put back on at that point, along with additional tariffs, levied against countries around the world. So it's going to be an even larger action than the last one that he flirted with the last time we went through the tariffs. Are they on again, off again, et cetera? And also we should keep in mind, we didn't roll back all of the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Majority of them, the goods that are subject to USMCA, were rolled back, but there's still a significant portion of goods coming in from those countries that are subject to tariffs. So you already have that. You have, as we're going to talk about in this show, a potential shutdown battle. How is that going to go? It looks like there continue to be some Republican holdouts. Are they going to ultimately buckle? The Democrats say that they are holding the line, so you've got that as well. So, and you've got, Doge and Elon still doing their thing out there, imposing austerity at a time when, it looks like the economy is in danger of pulling back and even potentially retracting, if you believe what the Atlanta Fed has to say. So there's just a lot out there. And consumers are increasingly concerned. Consumer spending is soft and is retreating. You have the reverberating effects of the federal government cuts and freezes that are ongoing. So there are quite a lot of reasons to think that this is not, in fact, just a blip. Now, it's hard to know these things in the moment. If you look at that graph of what the market did during the dot-com crash.
We have that. I can show it to everybody.
It's not like it was straight down.
Yeah.
It would go down, and then it's recovering. Now it's going back to, it's recovering a little bit more. And so it can be hard to know what the ultimate trajectory is. And, there's no guarantees here as well what direction the market is ultimately going to go in. But while, the gains in the stock market are disproportionately consolidated among the rich, everybody suffers when the market crashes because people lose their jobs, consumer spending drops, and there is a theory out there that that's actually kind of a plan from Trump, that, he's worried that the tariffs could hike inflation. And one way to deal with inflation is basically to crush regular people so they have no money to spend in the economy, so that there's less demand to combat the other pressures that would cause prices to increase. So that could be what's going on here as well.
Yeah, they also call that the Federal Reserve theory of politics. Let's also take a listen to Donald Trump on Air Force One being asked about a recession and how he will, quote, land the plane. Let's take a listen.
We're just about ready to land.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you, and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this: we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know